All right, we're about ready to get underway with the Bitcoin presentation by Steven Clyde. But in the meantime, while we're waiting for a few more people to jump on, we're going to listen to Murray Rothbard talk about making a ham sandwich. And Steven, you posted an article about the guy who made a ham sandwich that cost about $1,500 and took him like 2 or 3 years to do.
And he said it was just okay. I was so disappointed for him.
All right, well let's hear how your average ham sandwich gets made right here.
But the point of this value scale is strictly ordinal. It cannot be measured. It's really still being thought out in economics. It's an amazing thing. But I guess people need something to do. It's part of the activity. Okay, so Crusoe finds that nature is digitally, you say. In other words, well, he's got that personal energy all right. He's got the stream there and the fish. There's not too much else. So he's got to work hard to do what? He's got to work hard to take these natural resources, take the land, and transform it very quickly into uses and methods and patterns by which he can start enjoying the fruits. In other words, he has to start he has to construct a bow and arrow and hunt deer or something. He has to build a net and hunt fish. Get a log, chop down, get an axe and chop down trees and build a log cabin. So it's only after he gets the fish, and after he gets in other words, the fish he wants, the fish in the cabin and the deer and the meat that he wants. The other stuff are simply means, byways, paths by which he finally gets to the desired direct use. The directly useful product that he actually uses. In other words, his final goal are called consumer goods. So he eats the fish and he lives in a log cabin and he eats the meat and so forth. Or he wears the clothing. These are direct consumer goods. Everything else in this process of transformation, of getting from the original nature, natural brook and so forth down to the consumer goods, all these other things are called capital goods. So now we have all these other things are called capital goods. So now we have a category of capital goods, which are stations on the way to the consumer goods. Anything else, anything which is not either personal energy or land, original land, or is not directly useful, which are consumer goods. All these other things are capital goods. Capital goods are, of course, very heterogeneous, obviously. They consist of all sorts of stuff. For example, in the case of Crusoe, there's only the axe, and there's not too many. There's the axe and the bow and arrow, maybe a boat if he will construct one. In the modern world, getting back to the modern world, there's an enormous number of capital goods of all sorts of processes and stages of this process, the transformation process. Essentially, the transformation process is called production. So what we mean by production is the use of personal energy, operating on land, and transforming land into this process of capital goods to finally get to the consumer goods. Take, for example, all these stages of production that are involved in me eating a ham sandwich tomorrow. There's an enormous number of stages involving millions of people, literally, and all scattered all over the world. I can't even trace all the stuff going back. If you start just with a ham, you have to then go to the wholesaler of the ham, and then the jobber, and then the meat packer, and then the slaughterhouse, and then back to the pig raiser, and then back to the corn raiser who feeds the pig, so forth and so on. The machinery that's used in this process, plus the land that's used in all this stuff, plus the trucks that are used to transport them, the tires and the gasoline, all these things, reduced all the way back to many, many decades and scattered over a large area. And all these things in the process of production, whether it's the wholesale, whether it's the stockyards or the trucks or the inventory of armor or ham or whatever, all these things are capital goods until they finally get to the retail store or restaurant and you buy them. And then, of course, you get to the bread, and the whole process going up to the flour and the miller and all that stuff, and back to the wheat farmer, threshing machine, and it's way, way back. And you get to the butter on the bread, you go through the whole process again. So the amount of capital goods is enormous. And each stage of production, land and labor is involved in this whole process.
All right, there you go, man.
All right, guys, can everyone hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yep, I can hear you.
Alrighty. So the reason I really wanted to do this is because I think a lot of you are kind of borderline in getting involved with cryptocurrency. A lot of it just sounds kind of odd to the average person. So without further ado, this is Bitcoin 101. I tried to break all this down so it's as easy as possible to grasp. So here we go. Satoshi Nakamoto, this is the guy. His true identity is unknown. We really don't know who this guy is. He's some random guy. He says he lives in Japan, but it's been speculated this guy lives in a region between Universal Time 5 to 6. This includes parts of North America, Central America, the Caribbean. You know, it's just, point is we don't know where this guy lives. It's kind of odd. In October 2008, he wrote the initial guide on how to implement Bitcoin, titled Bitcoin, a Peer-to-Peer Electronic Cash System. So this is what really started it all. And at the bottom, I'll have that link there where you can go see that. But it's online. You can just go read it. But it's his initial thesis on it. So in January 2009, he launched the first open source Bitcoin client, and he mined the first block. So kind of how everything is put together is on the blockchain. So I'll explain this later, but he mined the very first block called the Genesis block. So this rewarded him 50 Bitcoins, and the Genesis time block has a stamp of whatever on January 3rd, 2009. So that was the first time it was ever mined. First transaction was between him and Hal Finney for 10 Bitcoins, and 10 Bitcoins now is worth about like 34 grand. So let's get to this next part. So theoretically, this guy is one of the richest people in the world. So when he first started mining, he mined 1 million Bitcoins. 1 million. So let me just show you this next part right here. So there's some random guy named Sergio, and he did kind of an analysis on the first blocks that were ever mined. And basically what he found was, let me show you this next picture here. He found this pattern here, and noticed that this all had to have been done by one person. So between this time here, he mined 1 million Bitcoins. So you can note that out of the 1,814,400 Bitcoin awarded during that time, a lot of it sits unspent. It's just kind of sitting there, just wandering around. Okay. All right. So this part's really exciting, and this is one of the most interesting things I found in all of my research. So in the Genesis block, in the very first block that he ever mined, he imprinted this message. He said, "The Times, January 3rd, 2009, Chancellor on brink of second bailout for banks." Huh. What was he talking about? Well, this is a reference to an article written in the Times, which is a London newspaper, and he's speaking of the possibility of bailing the banks out again. The chancellor had to decide on whether to, quote, pump billions more into the economy, as evidence mounts that 37 billion euros part nationalization last year has failed to keep the credit flowing. Another quote, the bank is expected to take yet more aggressive action this week by cutting the base rate from its current level of 2%. Doing so would reduce the cost of borrowing but have little effect on the availability of loans. So, you know, despite who this guy is, you can tell he was very aware of what was going on, especially after the financial crisis of 2008, 2009. All right. So this is actually the abstract of Satoshi's paper, and I'll just go ahead and read it out to you. A purely peer-to-peer version of electronic cash would allow online payments to be sent directly from one party to another without going through a financial institution. This is the big key, actually, guys. Is not having a middleman institution, is that the way the system is implemented, we can all interact with each other on a large network, and there isn't a middleman. You know, the miners confirm everything. So digital signatures provide part of the solution, but the main benefits are lost if a trusted third party is still required to prevent double spending. Double spending means the double spending of the same amount of coins. So we propose a solution to the double spending problem using a peer-to-peer network. The network timestamps transactions by hashing them into an ongoing chain of hash-based proof of work, forming a record that cannot be changed without redoing the proof of work. The longest chain not only serves as proof of the sequence of events witnessed, but proof that it came from the largest pool of CPU power. As long as the majority of CPU power is controlled by nodes that are not cooperating to attack the network, they'll generate the longest chain and outpace attackers. The network itself requires minimal structure. Messages are broadcast on a best effort basis, and nodes can leave and rejoin the network at will, accepting the longest proof of work chain as proof of what happened while they're gone. Now, the beauty of that is I know that all just sounded like Chinese to you guys, but you're actually going to understand everything when I'm done with this presentation of what he's saying there. All right, so another quote from that paper. In this paper, we propose a solution to the double spending problem using a peer-to-peer distributed timestamp server to generate computational proof of the chronological order of transactions. The system is secure as long as honest nodes collectively control more CPU power than any cooperating group of attacker nodes. So basically, the initial objection you can think of is, if I'm sending some digital currency to some random wallet, what's to prevent someone from accessing my wallet and forging that transaction, basically double spending the coins? And if you could double spend the coins, what would this do to the currency? Well, it would destroy it. I mean, you'd be able to inflate the currency indefinitely, which obviously it's the exact opposite of what Bitcoin was intended for. Alrighty, so after all that, we're just now getting to the basics. So the basics, the first thing to realize is there's a capped supply. There are 21 million Bitcoins in the total amount of supply to be mined, but as of now, as I was writing this about a week ago, the circulating supply is about 16,483,250. All right, so the lowest possible price is 0.0000001 Bitcoin, which is 8 decimal places. The way we would read this right here, we'd call that 1 Satoshi, and that's named after its founder. So if you ever hear someone say like, I bought a coin at 45,000 Satoshis, what they really mean is that the price is 0.00045,000. All right. So the way this all really works is it operates on an open ledger system. You can copy and paste any Bitcoin wallet address into a block explorer, such as blockexplorer.com, to see what was sent in and out of that wallet. You can also see what blocks were recently mined and what rewards were paid off to who, and I'll show you guys that in a second. So this is kind of a critical part of it, and which really kind of connects everything, and you'll understand in a second. The transaction fee, which is what is received by the miners, ensures a minimum amount you can send. So think of like think about when you go to a gas station and there's a $5 minimum to swipe your card. Well, the reason there is because imagine you could buy something for 1 cent. Well, they would lose money having that credit, swiper. So there has to be a minimum amount so they can actually make money. So kind of the same idea here. So a sender can choose to have no transaction fee, but the transaction will most likely take longer, and you can actually end up in some pretty bad issues. If you don't send a transaction fee, it might just get stuck. If you're sending a certain amount of money, you want to send a reasonable transaction fee to compensate the miner for confirming your transaction.
Or else it acts as a price control.
Right. Exactly. I mean, essentially what I'm helping you guys understand is the incentives. Why are there incentives for people to even do this? I mean, theoretically, yeah, it is just digital fiat, non-backed money, but why does it actually have value? Why am I able to take a Bitcoin and exchange it for $3,400, Federal Reserve notes? So miners use electricity along with their graphics cards, and you used to be able to do it with CPUs, but mostly you have to do it with your graphics cards nowadays, to add and confirm transactions to the ledger. Alright. Blockchain, the open ledger. So this is what I was talking about. So if you go to blockexplorer.com or blockchain.info, you can look at all the transactions that are incoming. So right here you can kind of see a wallet was sending money here, and this is the receiving wallet. This was the amount sent. This is the timestamp. All right, so what does a transaction look like? Say I'm person and I'm wallet A, and I want to send an amount to somebody. Well, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take their wallet address and I'm going to type it in. And if me and you were face to face with a cell phone with the app, I can just scan your QR code and just enter in that wallet address. So after you type in an amount and you press send to that wallet address, it's going to broadcast this to the network. It's going to broadcast to the network that you're sending Bitcoin to another wallet, and that the network is going to have to either confirm or deny this transaction to the network. Now, it'd probably only deny it if it thought it was some type of fraudulent double spending transaction, but if it was a regular transaction, it would get confirmed. So miners, basically what they do is they timestamp and add your transactions to the ledger and verify that the buyer and the receiver signatures match up per se, that they can't be falsified. And then at that point, Wallet B would receive the Bitcoin. So let me show you an example of this. This wallet right here, starting with 1 and ending with 2, sent this amount of Bitcoin on August 2nd, 2017 at 1 a.m. with a transaction fee of so-and-so to wallet address so-and-so. So basically the point is all of this is documented along the way. And once it's added to the ledger, it cannot be removed. All right. So this is an example of Coinbase. This is an app you can download to really get into cryptocurrency and buy it for the first time. You can see right in the section right here, this is where you would enter in your wallet address, type in the amount, and once you do that, it would set your transaction fee and you would adjust that. Then you just press send and it would say it's signing your transaction, and that's going to send your funds. All right, so this is the example I was talking about. So this is an open transaction. This is actually a real one. I just took it offline. So you can see this address right here. They wanted to send this amount right here, so 0.00437188. And they were sending it to this address right here, starting with a 3, ending with a C. So there was a fee of 0.000177747. And after all that went through, you have the final amount in that person's wallet of 0.004194441. And basically what this is showing here, so this person must have received money here, and then this amount right here, which you see the S in parentheses, that's actually a spent amount. So this person sent out of this wallet right here 0.00418 Bitcoin. So this right here, this 0.0001441, that's basically nothing. I mean, I don't even know how much that would be, like a penny, maybe a fraction of a penny, like maybe one day it'll be worth something, but this is actually too small of an amount to get out of your wallet. It's kind of stuck there. So, I mean, if you have a lot of different wallets, you got to keep track of, how much extra change do I have left over?
May I interject with a quick question?
Yeah, what's up?
Okay, whenever they first started to mine 21 million, like you said, right now it's like 16 and how it changed.
Right.
It's actually in circulation. Was that based on just what they perceived with the number of people who were initially involved and were going to stay involved and committed to it, that they could maybe formulate a rough number that would satisfy at least the initial demand and maybe a growing demand for the near future? I'm just saying, how did that number come about, really?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, 21 million, that's a kind of arbitrary number. I don't know where that number came from. When they were implementing it, they were obviously thinking, cap supply. But when I get into the mining part, you're going to really understand why it's such a cap supply. I mean, it is capped at 21 million, but it's essentially going to cap itself before that because transaction fees are going to get so high and transactions are going to take so long. People aren't going to be willing to mine it anymore. And once people aren't willing to mine, another thing I want to mention is it's not really about Bitcoin. It's about cryptocurrency. Bitcoin is just so you can understand where this all came about. And then once you acquire some Bitcoin, then you can get add to your portfolio a bunch of different coins. But it's easy to understand Bitcoin first and understand, okay, now I understand the different uses for all these 800 plus cryptocurrencies.
I like that, the way you described it, because it's just like, say, for real gold, you mine it with, physical miners' labors and capital and to excavate it. And with cryptocurrencies, you do have, digital hacking, so to speak, where, we're trying to make the, codes and the formulas and questions.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. I mean, that's, no matter which way you look at it, you are spending real money to do this. Miners are spending money on electricity to power their graphics cards. I mean, some people have warehouses doing this, so it's quite an enormous amount of electricity used.
Yeah.
All right, so wallet addresses. So this is a really easy point to understand. So every crypto coin has a specific type of wallet address, and they all look different based on the coin. So for example, Bitcoin, every Bitcoin wallet address is going to start with either a 1 or a 3. For example, another coin, a popular coin named Ethereum, it starts with an OX. Dash is going to start with an X. So the point of this, imagine I tried to send some Bitcoin to a Dash wallet. Well, I actually don't even think it would go through. I think it would probably just give you an error message, but if it did go through, you're fucked, obviously. I mean, you said it's like a coin that doesn't even exist, but the point being, there are things in place so you can even recognize that it's a certain type of wallet address. Oh, and Zcash starts with a T1. It's another coin. All right, so a lot of what this gets into is public key cryptography. So cryptography is really, really old, just figuring out ways to decode different numbers. I don't know if you guys have ever seen what a cryptex is. It's a little kind of thing. It's usually like 3 or 4 numbers as a code, and you can lock stuff inside it, but the kind of idea. So in 1976, Whitfield Diffie and Martin Hellman put out a paper called Multi-User Cryptographic Techniques. This is really where cryptography as we know it came from in the modern sense. So this explained the idea of having 2 keys, in which one is open to the public, and a private key which is held in secrecy. So what they envisioned is a system in which the public key is used for encryption, and the private key is used for the decryption. So I don't know if you guys have ever heard about encryption and decryption. If I'm going to encrypt a message specifically to you, obviously on your end, you're going to have a method to decrypt that so you can read it, but otherwise no one else can read that. It'll just be gibberish. All right, and I posted a link there for that. This is actually a really What's up?
What about the NSA?
Oh man, we're probably fucked in that sense, but yeah. So this is just an example, so you can see if Bob wanted to sell Alice, send Alice something, so they're going to encrypt a bunch of their gibberish. So this is Alice's public key, so they're going to encrypt that. They're going to send it to Alice, and with Alice's private key, so this is important. So the public key, in other words, is just the wallet address, if that makes sense. And the private key is it's another string of numbers, but it's a little bit different. So encrypts, decrypts, and then Alice can have access to this key. But imagine Dave came along and tried to decrypt this message. He wouldn't be able to do it. It would, even if he could do it, it would take him a trillion years. And I'll get to that. It's literally impossible to do this for a human to do this. A computer has to do it. All right. So the public key, like I said, the public key is just your wallet address. This is actually a wallet I made, and I'll probably start posting it. But if you want to on your blog or whatever it is, you can just put it like a donation wallet and have people send you coin, and it's free money. So private key. This is a little more complicated. Your private key is what's held by you and only you. It's what's used to confirm your identity in a way that's not replicable unless someone had access to your devices. So literally, unless someone had your password, access to your device. I mean, maybe if you were at gunpoint, you'd give all that information up. But otherwise, you're much more likely to have your physical cash stolen from you, your physical gold, whatever it is. It's pretty hard to steal this from you. In fact, why do people even need to know you have it? That's how secret you can be about it. I mean, if I had 100 Bitcoins right now, I wouldn't tell a soul. I would be scared to death of anybody knowing I had that much. But anyways. This is an example of a private key. They look a little bit different. They're usually like 52 characters. Yeah, just a bunch of string of numbers and letters. All right, so this is an analogy. Imagine you take a letter and you put it in the postal box. You can't take the letter back out, and if you could, you would have access to everyone's mail in that box. The private key is needed to open the mailbox and is only held by the person that has access to the mailbox. Similarly, when sending Bitcoin, you will enter in the receiver's public key, and the receiver will then use their own private key to access the sent Bitcoins. So, I mean, that's a really, really simplistic analogy, but you can kind of imagine, just someone has a key that only they have a key to, and here's another thing. A private key is much stronger than a physical key in the sense that for someone can physically pick your key lock. That's not hard to do, but this is an interesting stat that this guy posted on this video. To correctly guess a private key by hand, it would take 204 trisvigintillion years to break. This is 10 to the power of 72, 204 times in years. Impossible. Impossible. Just clarify the safety features. It's pretty safe. And there's also a link here that's really good video for explaining public and private keys. It could be a little tricky at first to understand. All right, mining. This is really, really where it comes all together. For real. In order for all this to work, the value needs to come from somewhere. There needs to be incentives to maintain such a system. So mining is the process of using electricity to power graphics cards, which through the system locates transactions that need to be confirmed. So the first thing that's going to happen is when you broadcast your transaction, a miner or a mining pool is going to grab that transaction and start processing it and trying to. And I'll explain this more so you guys can really understand it. But they grab that transaction and they confirm it to the ledger and make it a permanent part of that block. So when I say mining a block, that basically just means once the block is full enough of transactions added to the ledger, it's going to move on to the next block. So all the old blocks that we have in the past, those are all solidified. Those cannot be changed. Those are like locked in stone. And from here, we're just adding confirmations to the current block. So the way blocks are set up, they're set up to be mined at a rate of every 10 minutes. And that's how the system's designed. So imagine tomorrow everybody went out and bought a graphics card and started mining. It wouldn't mean that everybody would start getting a lot more money really quick. In fact, the system would just level off to where you're still mining a block every 10 minutes. That's literally how it's set up. All right, so people usually mine in pools. The reason being, mining by yourself isn't that profitable nowadays. There was a time when mining Bitcoin especially was profitable. Now I will say there are coins like I used to mine Zcash, and Zcash, it was probably making me like 50 cents a day. But man, if I had just kept that going, by now I would have had a few $100s, and you can turn a few $100s into thousands pretty easily. So people usually mine in pools because this combines all the computer power and allows you to compute more calculations. So it takes someone nearly forever to mine alone unless they had a huge setup with a lot of rigs. I mean, in a sense, you could be your own mining pool if you had like 100 graphics card rigs, but not many people want to do that, use that much electricity, because even if you're doing that, that's really an investment for the future. You're not doing that to make money now. You're doing that because, okay, I'm gonna mine these bitcoins and one day they're going to be worth a lot. All right. So the system takes into account miner shares, meaning the transactions processed and the amount of GPU power to put into the work. So this basically means, obviously, every graphics card is different. Well, it's different if it's a different brand. So some graphics cards are going to calculate a lot faster than other graphics cards. So that's going to be taken into consideration. So the amount of work you put in with your own graphics card is going to be considered in the reward you get. So when that reward is given to everybody, it's going to be split based on the work put into it. Sounds pretty fair to me. Right, so once the block is completely mined, the miners are paid out a reward based on their hash calculation contributions and also from the transaction fees. So a miner's income comes from partially when a block is mined, new Bitcoin is put into circulation, so they get a reward partially from that, and the other part of that's the transaction fees. So they kind of have two sources of income. So there is motivation to do it. I wouldn't say not do it if you have free electricity around and have a graphics card, but just take that into consideration. So blocks are set up to be mined once every 10 minutes, like I said. So this amounts to 144 blocks a day on average mined. So each block is set to pay out a certain amount of Bitcoin over time. So the first blocks in 2009 when Satoshi mined, this gave out a reward of 50 blocks. And this gets halved every 210,000 blocks, or about every 4 years. So let me just show you guys that. So basically what this is showing, you can see from here, this is when Bitcoin was first put into circulation. This blue line is the amount of Bitcoin being put into circulation, okay? And basically the way Bitcoin is put into circulation is when it's mined, the blocks, when you mine a block, it gives you out a reward. So in 2017, looks like you're getting like 12.5 blocks or 12.5 bitcoins per block, and in 2021 you'll be down to about 10 bitcoins per block. And you can kind of see over time you're getting paid out less and less and less. So simultaneously the value is always going up, but you know, this is basically what makes it work. The cap supply, along with the fact that it's, you know, slowly being put out into circulation, and over time you can kind of see right here where this kind of like, you know, it really starts capping itself around this area because the incentive to mine just isn't there anymore. You know, if you have graphics cards and you can go mine another coin that's going to make you like $1 a day, $2 a day, you're just not going to do this. So you're just going to stop mining altogether, and it's going to make the network very, very slow one day. That's why I'm saying Bitcoin isn't an end all. Bitcoin is like the MySpace of all this. You know, Bitcoin is the foundation, and in time, Bitcoin's probably going to be phased out for something else. Maybe Ethereum, maybe Litecoin. Who knows? That's the beauty of it. But it's really a free market in that sense that reputation and, you know, the coins that don't get their websites hacked and basic things, like those are the coins that are going to thrive. All right. So all mining, it kind of looks the same. It kind of looks like a command prompt, and you basically just start a function, and basically you have the miner tied to your wallet address. So basically here it's starting mining. So remember when I talked earlier about how miners get a share of the work they do? Well, you can see here 3,004 kilohashes a second. This is what the graphics card is actually doing. It's doing all these reverse calculations to add transactions to the ledger. So you see accepted right here. This is a transaction added to the ledger. You see accepted down here, a transaction added to the ledger. So that's basically what that means. All right. So how does the hashing calculations work? So this is another thing that really puts it all together, that you can really understand why it's a forward process, but it can't be reversed. It can't be reversed by humans. No human could do this. Okay, so this works through a process known as cryptographic proof of work. This utilizes the public and private keys in order to verify identities and prevent double spending. So this is kind of a simplistic example, but just to kind of give you an idea of how this would work. Say, for example, that we played a guessing game, and you had to guess a number between 1 and 100. On average, it would take you, say, 50 guesses to get the correct answer, and on different occasions you'll have more or less, but overall it would tend to average out. So your function would be f of 1 minus 100, 1 to 100 equals x. So this is the forward motion. This is what's easy to compute because, you know, it's kind of like having the formula to the problem and you're just kind of putting in the inputs and you get the output. Well, now imagine the same scenario except the situation's in reverse. You know that the number to start with, and say it's 60, but your goal is to figure out the inputs used to get to 60. Was it 12 times 5, 20 times 3, 10 times 6? Well, the correct arrangement matters, and you know, one of these will be the correct input, but the arrangement matters. So the goal of hashing calculation is just to kind of reverse this process in a way humans can't. It basically does billions and billions of calculations to reverse these functions and find solutions that fit. Okay, so this is why it's kind of complicated in that sense, but maybe this helps you understand a little bit better. So the main point is that you have a process which is easy to convert in a forward manner, that it's easy to compute the function to see if it matches up how it's supposed to, but it's impossible for a human to do the inverting process. Only the capability of hashing out billions of test functions to find the correct inputs will lead to correct solutions, which will then allow the miner to broadcast that they found the solution. So I actually paraphrased that from, if you really want to understand Bitcoin better, Bob Murphy and Silas Barta put out a book back in, I think it was December 2014, called Understanding Bitcoin. You can read that on understandingbitcoin.us. Really, really simplistic and really good overall view of it. They did a good job with it. So proof of work, this proves what people actually did. Proof of work simply means that there is proof that computational efforts took place on behalf of the miner to contribute to the adding of the ledger process, in which they successfully found solutions to confirm the transactions of the block. This is important in detecting fraud and is why the Bitcoin protocol is set up to add to the ledger with the biggest proof of work attached to it, namely the most number of attempted tries at solving the solution. So you can recall earlier when Satoshi said in his abstract that, you know, the way the system beats out attackers is if a majority of the network is not acting fraudulently, everything the attackers are going to get phased out. Their transactions are going to get denied. Their double spending will be caught. They can't possibly overtake the network, and it would be impossible for a majority of the network to take over itself. I mean, that's just crazy. I mean, most people are in this to make money. It's only really a few really smart hackers who even know how to do this in the first place. So that's something to think about. All right, and it's, like I said, that's avoiding the process of double spending. That was really the initial concern: is how do we prevent double spending? You have these big digital strings of code. I mean, couldn't I just copy and paste it essentially? All right. So just to summarize, with all we've learned so far, Bitcoin is a digital currency with a slowly added but capped supply that operates on an open ledger system in which miners, using graphics card power, add and confirm transactions to the ledger while also confirming identities, public and private keys, and preventing double spending / fraudulent activities. All right, so this is more the part where it's more or less my opinion, just kind of giving you some insights into what you can really do. So why buy Bitcoin? Well, Federal Reserve notes, aka dollar bills, are unsound money. I mean, we know this by the economics we study every day. Though once backed by gold, they're backed by nothing, except consumer confidence. The fact that you ask the average Joe what is money, they're gonna pull out a dollar bill or a quarter or something like that. So I would say, though technically an unbacked fiat currency with high levels of volatility, it's still backed up by the fact that, one, smartphones and computers are ingrained into our lives, and swipe to pay and online payment transfers, it's going to become the norm. It's going to happen. I mean, there's already things like Apple Pay where you can swipe to pay, but we're going to get to that point where everything's just going to be tied to our cell phones. Where cash is just going to be a nuisance. I don't know if you guys have ever heard about that Amazon store that's going to open, where basically you walk in and you take stuff out, and it detects everything you've taken, and you just put it in your bag and walk out, and then it charges you.
Eliminating the need for cashiers, or at least many of them.
Yeah, exactly. And seriously, blockchain is gonna do away with a lot of people. I mean, it just is. Blockchain technology is going to be implemented into everything. So isn't there an employer in Wisconsin that's wanting to implant chips into his workers? Or I've seen that article going around Facebook. Sorry, what was that again?
The Wisconsin employer who wants to implant the chips into his employees.
Oh yeah, I mean, that's a weird one. I mean, if people want to voluntarily do that, I don't see why they couldn't. But it seems like kind of a fool's thing to do.
Orwell's trap.
Yeah. All right. But anyways, with the cap supply, the value it could reach is astronomical. In fact, I was reading an article this morning about this guy from Harvard, and he thinks Bitcoin could be like $100,000 by 2021. And that sounds crazy, but think about everything I've told you so far. It's a cap supply. It's slowly inserting the money in. Just think about the fact that you all in this group chat right now know more about Bitcoin than probably like 99% of everybody. I mean, no one really not many people can really grasp this. And in fact, the other day, I was arguing with this guy, and he was equating Bitcoin to counterfeit money. This is literally how some people view it. So I mean, the way I see it, I would tell my close friends, but everybody else, I would just be like, yeah, Bitcoin's a scam. I would be the person spreading fear and telling them not to get into it, because as soon as everybody gets into it, the price is going to skyrocket. It's really gonna. I mean, even if you're buying at 3,400 right now, or just half a Bitcoin or whatever, it's gonna skyrocket. It's just gonna happen. I know a guy who he invested $950 last July. He's probably sitting on like 80 grand. I mean, I haven't even talked to him since Bitcoin went from like 2,800 to 3,400. He might be sitting on like 100 grand now. That guy is set for life. I'll just say that he's set for life. All right. So Bitcoin. What's up?
Just the way you just described that would just made me think about land and its fixed supply, and how as it gets consumed, the price tends to go up, at least historically with real estate. And the same with, like you said, Bitcoin. If the supply is fixed and more people get into it, then naturally, yes, it could go up very high. So that's an interesting way to think about it, just putting it with how land tends to rise.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think that's the greatest thing you could do for like your kids or grandkids right now is put like a Bitcoin away from in like a secret wallet, and have like your wife or someone close to who has like the key to get into that wallet, and one day they can open that wallet in an emergency. I was reading this horrible story about this guy. This guy died with 220 bitcoins, and you can imagine how much that is. But he died with 220 bitcoins, and his poor widow is him and her and the lawyer are trying to figure out how to access these bitcoins. Apparently this guy had pretty much all his money into Bitcoin, 220 bitcoins. So their whole life is ruined. So I mean, you got to set it up right. But I mean, you can really, even if it's gold's another good thing to buy. Just diversify those assets. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Put a bunch of eggs in one basket. So a bunch of different eggs. That would be my advice. I mean, I'm not a financial advisor, but the more you diversify, you might really hit big on something. So Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies will be accepted virtually everywhere in the near future. I'm not kidding. I'm not just making it up to hype it up. It will be accepted nearly everywhere, just for the fact that people realize, if I can just acquire Bitcoin and hold it, I'm a big business. I'm already making a lot of money. I can just acquire Bitcoin and hold it and just put it aside, and I'll be set in a few years. That's exactly what most people are doing. So let me give you an example. I mean, another reason it stretches much beyond Bitcoin is just the uses of it. Think about the individual uses. So Popcoin is a coin attempting to be made widespread as a currency in dispensaries. Golem is a coin that will literally allow people to rent out their unused computer power, which sounds kind of odd, but you can look at the Golem and say what they're doing is really, really amazing and unique. There are coins like Monero where it's a really completely anonymous coin. It's meant for, Bitcoin is not anonymous. Unless your first Bitcoin bought is from someone in cash in person with your name not tied to it, if you buy from Coinbase or buy from local Bitcoins or whatever, like your name is tied to that. Like they can trace you back through the ledger and find you if you did something illegal. But Monero is an anonymous coin. Theoretically, it's really, 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 really hard to trace it back to people. So you can imagine where that's trying to be implemented. Digibyte is a coin related to the gaming world. You can games like League of Legends and Counter-Strike Go. You can earn Digibyte by just playing the game. So they kind of like sponsor you in a sense to play the game, and over time they can hype up the coins. Really, really smart. Really, really smart. I don't know if they'll survive, but the point is you can just imagine all the different uses you could have for coins. It's not just about Bitcoin. It's not just about a medium of exchange. It's like the use of it. You can make a brand around a coin. That's crazy about it. The last thing I'll add is blockchain technology itself has many uses for businesses. So you can just imagine the ledger system we described this whole time, how useful that is for a business that deals with a lot of transactions, especially online payments. How are you going to catch certain things? I mean, this weeds out a lot of stuff you have to deal with in business. The blockchain technology can be implemented in so many different ways. Actually, in fact, one last thing. So, last thing I would add is invest in yourself and never put all your eggs in one basket. Whether you're holding gold, silver, Bitcoin, Popcoin, whatever, the reason you're doing it is to diversify your assets. If you understand Austrian business cycle, you understand that the situation we're in with the Federal Reserve and dollar bills, it's not going to last. We're all drunk right now thinking it's going to last, and we're going to feel the hangover eventually. But when that day comes, you don't have to feel as much pain as everybody else is going to. So that'd be one reason I would just buy Bitcoin. Alright, so where can you buy Bitcoin? There's a few different options. One, you can find a friend who will sell you some, and that's honestly what I suggest. Find a friend who is your buddy, and will sell it to you for pretty much a market price. What you don't want to do is buy Bitcoin really, really high, and maybe the first time you buy Bitcoin you're already losing money. Like, you don't want to put yourself in that position. Like, this is exactly like stocks, and that you buy as low as you can and you sell high. It's very, very simple in that sense, despite all the intricacies. So option two, Coinbase it's a pretty good app. It's pretty reliable. I've used it many times. It's usually like a $200 limit per day you can buy, but for just starting out, it's great for that. You can enter in your debit card and have Bitcoin instantly. It's pretty nice. The one thing I'll say about that is there are limits to how much you can buy. So if you do get deep into this, Coinbase it's going to be off the table for you. You're not going to want to use that. So this is my favorite site to use. It's a site called localbitcoins.com. So this allows you to either wire transfer money, you can imagine like Western Union almost, and you can also buy Bitcoins in cash. You can sell Bitcoins. I've personally used the site to do both. I've bought and sold, no problems at all. I mean, a little common sense if you're dealing with a lot of money, you know, meet in a bank lobby if you have to, you know, meet in a place where like, you know, they can't just up and run. But the main con to local Bitcoins, the fees tend to be very high. You know, I was looking at the prices yesterday, and you know, some guy was selling Bitcoins for like $3,800. So he's selling it for like $400 above market price. So that's I don't even know what that is. That's a very high percentage above. Fees tend to be like 10 to 15% usually. Like, people are going to try to make money. So another good thing for you, if you have Bitcoins, I mean, you can make a hefty profit. I mean, people who have Bitcoins right now, they can make so much money on it. And basically all you have to do, sell your Bitcoin at a profit and just buy back in. You already have your 10 to 15% interest. You're just buying back in low, and you just do it over again. I'm telling you, there are people who make like $2 to $3 grand a day doing this. Just buy low and just make like a 10% gain. Do it over again. Just do it over and over and over again. That's what day trading is. So local Bitcoins, the main con to it is it keeps a lot of information on file. Like, you literally got to like scan your ID to get on file with local Bitcoins. But you know, that's kind of for your own good. You know, if you're buying like $2,000 worth, if the guy holds you at gunpoint and runs, you're going to want to be able to say, okay, this guy did this. Is his ID on file? And it will be on file unless it's a fake ID. So I mean, it's not foolproof, but you know, it's pretty safe if you're smart. And the last option, I really don't recommend this, but they do exist. There are Bitcoin ATMs that are popping up in those cities. My city has a bunch of them. I hate them because their fees are so high. Their fees are like 13% flat. So I mean, that's just a lot. I think it's really playing off people that don't know much about the market, and you know, you're buying it at 13% marked up. Well, you better hope Bitcoin goes up 13% or whatever. You're going to lose money. Alrighty. So this is just what kind of the Coinbase app looks like. You can download this on your phone. I think you can even access the Coinbase on your internet on your computer, but mostly just on your cell phone. It's really nice app actually. And this is what local Bitcoins look like. So you can see right as you log in. You can look near your city. You don't really need, if you want to buy in cash, you're obviously going to want to look for people nearby. But a lot of these, it's just you go to like a Western Union, wire the money, and then you receive the Bitcoin, and it's all reputation based. So you can see this person has done like 1,000+ transactions, 500+ transactions. You know, it's the kind of reputation you look for. You don't want to buy from a guy with 2 transactions. You know, kind of common sense. Free market stuff. Where can you spend Bitcoin? Well, more and more places are accepting it every day. Like I said, there are sites like spendbitcoins.com, which you can type in the product you're looking for, and it'll find it for you and figure out where you can buy it in Bitcoin. And if you're able to buy it in Bitcoin, you're probably buying it at a discount, really, and I'll explain with this. So Purse.io, great site. I've used it many times successfully. You're able to buy Amazon items for 15% off. So it's for a large ticket item, it can be pretty good. Like if you're 15% off a drone, that's a pretty good discount. But you're giving up the Bitcoin. You know, their business model is that, like I said before, you're going to hoard the Bitcoins. You know, these people aren't receiving Bitcoins to spend them. They have a big vault somewhere with a bunch of Bitcoins they're hoarding, and they're taking a 15% loss now. But boy, they've probably already made their money back, if not they're already profitable. So, where can you spend Bitcoin? You can be creative. You can set up a business and accept Bitcoin. You know, fuck the permits, right? I mean, we hear about that nonsense every day. It's almost every day now. You hear about a lemonade stand getting busted, and some like 5-year-old girl getting told, like, hey, you can't do this. $200 fine, whatever. Just crazy. So you can be creative and spend it however you want, accept payment. And this is Purse.io, so a pretty good site. All right, that's it, guys. So I guess we can start our discussion. Anything you guys want to talk about?
That's good to know. Amazon takes it.
Oh yeah, I love this site. I've used it like 10 times, and it's pretty steady. Basically, how it works is they act as an Amazon account themselves, and they order the items for you. Obviously, they take the 15% loss on the products, but I don't know how long they've been operating. Like, they're probably operating at a huge profit right now, but this despite the 15% losses per product.
That's cool. Here's my initial general thought on not just cryptocurrencies, also competing currencies in general, like what Frederick Hayek envisioned, except not that he was envisioning different fiat currencies of different countries being able to compete, but I'm saying different currencies, regardless of whether they come from a country that has fiat currency or not, that or cryptocurrencies. The idea of all of that, if you had that kind of freedom, economic freedom, where you could, say, denationalize the dollar in the Fed and have competing currencies, including cryptocurrencies, that think about what that would do to all of the producers who benefit, say, from subsidies, tariffs, and the infusion of fiat currency into the system through monetary policy by the Fed and the Treasury buying up bonds and that kind of thing and selling them.
I mean, to me, that's one of like the beautiful things is once people really get on board with it, it's really, really going to have a ripple effect. People are going to have a certain time frame where they're going to be able to get on board or not, and some people are just going to miss out, and some people will decide, oh, I'm never going to accept Bitcoin. Well, boy, are they going to be upset when one day the dollar crashes. You know, all of our lives revolve around the dollar being the world reserve currency. And you know, as much as Peter Schiff hates Bitcoin, Peter Schiff, the motherfucker, he posted an article like a day or two ago saying, hey, gold can now be used in cancer treatments. Can Bitcoin be used in cancer treatments? So I mean, that was his argument. I mean, but you know, Peter's right about a lot of things. I mean, he's not a dumb guy. It's just his whole gold money thing. He has to really, really hype up the gold money, especially gold's not doing too great. I mean, the money's flowing into cryptocurrency. It's not flowing into gold. It's really not.
Well, one thing I like about it all is doing like all those things that we just discussed about ending the Fed and denationalizing the dollar and having cryptocurrencies and competing currencies. I mean, all of that would be a great emphasis for the producers to be on the edge, the always continually evolving edge of innovation, so that, you know, because they don't get the effects of the obstacles to innovation rendering more gratuitous utility and ability to get goods on better terms and that kind of thing, so that because they don't have the subsidies and tariffs and infusions of cash from the Fed, so they don't get that easy gravy train. And I think that in the end, even the producers that get put out of business because of that would have their losses far offset by the ones who stay in and allow for, you know, like you said, to be able to purchase goods and services in Bitcoin and other currencies too, and start to be part of the game. I think the effects could be certainly beneficial. I just don't know how many people want to get on board with it, but hopefully a lot.
Yeah, like I said, I think for the most part it just sounds odd to people. You know, people kind of envision it like, you know, if I just go type in a string of numbers in Notepad and copy that, email that to you that I'm sending you money, it's really not that at all. It's really a whole system that was beautifully implemented in a genius way. There's not much more to say other than that. I mean, the people who designed this were geniuses. I mean,
I agree. They're very smart.
And obviously, he really believed in it. You know, he mined the first million coins himself. There must have been quite a bit of computing power. He must have really believed in the idea that, you know, like I said, in the Genesis block, you know, what did he type in as a message, as a secret message? That, you know, the banks in England are about to, they need more money. They need to bail out the banks again. So, I mean, obviously the creator understood it. You know, the creator was more or less an Austrian, the way I see it, from any standpoint.
That's an interesting way of looking at it. And one thing I've thought about recently is that you take a state like West Virginia, where I live, a lot of youth are leaving the state, and there's going to be eventually a point where the people here work, the number and percentage of people working here isn't anywhere near enough to pay for all the basic services of the state that we're, you know, subjected to. And that being said, if you think about when you have an excess of youth leaving and no one moving here, a lot of the property values might eventually plummet, but this might open up a lot of the toxic losses on some of these banks to have Bitcoin. Do you think it could ever serve in like ghost town, like as a measure to prevent towns and states and cities from becoming ghost towns, states and cities?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
see what I'm saying? Like,
that would be like my next point is I can imagine why a lot of people wouldn't want to accept Bitcoin right now, because they got to think, how do I classify this in my statement? You know, how do I add this as legal money to my statement? Am I really allowed to say, okay, you know, I got paid 1 Bitcoin plus $1,000 cash? You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know how it could be legally implemented. I mean, that's you know, the government can fuck it up if they want to, but it's not going to destroy cryptocurrency. It would make it stronger. You know, the more the government messes with it, the stronger it gets. But you know, it'll simply get harder to be implemented in stores and stuff like that. But I don't think that's too much of a fear. Like, it's going to happen. Once too many people are involved with it and classify it as money, the government, what is the government going to do? You know, make it illegal for you to have Bitcoin? What was it in like the 1930s when the government came and, you know, forced everybody to give up their gold, and you know, the smart person would be like, yeah, you know, I don't have any more, and you know, obviously they have it stored in secret. You know, who would give up their money? It's asinine.
Mm-hmm.
So government can try, but I mean, another thing about cryptocurrency, I mean, the last time I checked, let's check CoinMarketCap right now, actually. So here we want to look at what's happening with coins. Go to the site.
This is a great presentation, by the way.
Oh, thanks, man. I've been working on it for like week and a half now. I'm trying to like fill in the gaps, trying to really make it like explain like I'm 5 level, but honestly, it's a 5-year-old couldn't understand it. So, but this is CoinMarketCap right now. You can see like the top coins right now: Bitcoin, Ethereum, Ripple. I don't like Ripple. Ripple is a bank coin, meaning the banks are propping up this coin. See, there are a few coins which are not decentralized coins like we want. We want free market, not centralized coins. So Ripple, boo, Ripple. So I don't know if you guys heard about the Bitcoin hard fork. That's kind of complicated to explain, but basically Bitcoin split in half between Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash. So when I was explaining like the mining, the blockchain, it basically expanded the size of the blockchain to 8 megabytes. So we're kind of seeing how this is going about, but basically what people thought would happen. So when the hard fork happened, Bitcoin was about at 2,800, right? And then when the hard fork happened, well, even right before that, Bitcoin started to surge. Bitcoin went up to like 3,300. And August 1st, when the fork happened, when Bitcoin Cash came on the market, it was hitting highs of like $700. So basically, no one thought that Bitcoin Cash was going to survive at all, and it just, to this day, I mean, I think it's slowly gonna fade away. Like, people want Bitcoin. Bitcoin Cash is a stupid idea, but you know, another thing I was stating earlier is that as time goes on, you know, transactions are going to become much slower. Transactions are going to become more costly. So, you know, imagine sending $100 and like the fee is $10. I mean, it will get to that point one day. That's just too much. No one's going to want to do that. So, yeah, I mean, that's the way I did this presentation. Like, this is like part 1. So I mean, there's actually so much more I could go into. Like, part 2 is going to be like after you have acquired Bitcoin for the first time, I can show you guys how to trade it. I can show you guys how to go sites like Poloniex or Bittrex, and you know, let's take a look at a chart. So this is the Ethereum chart, so you can just kind of go out here. So the first time I bought Ethereum last February. So let's see, that would have been here. Right. I bought Bitcoin I bought Ethereum at about like $50. So Ethereum right now $292. Holy crap! I actually bought my Ethereum at $50, and I think I sold it at like $60. I made like a nothingness gain. If I just held it, I would have made so much more. But just to kind of explain like where everything happened since like last February when I started. everything just went way up. In fact, that I can't imagine where my life would be if I'd invested like $5,000 back in February. I could have had like 50 grand. I don't even know how much I would have had because I've been day trading this whole time. But you got to think of it. You're making percentage gains. So if you invest $1,000, or if you invest like $100 and you make a 10% gain, that's $10. But if you invest $1,000 and you make a 10% gain, it's going to be more. So the more you invest, higher percentage gains. The people who make like $2-3 grand a day, they're obviously putting in like 10, 15, 20 grand and making like a quick 10% gain, and you can imagine that's pretty damn good. You guys there, Thomas and Dan?
Oh yeah, I'm still here.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm going to invoke a little Rothbard on you, if you don't mind.
Oh yeah, go for it. Hope you enjoyed the presentation, though, guys.
I did, yeah, and
Oh yeah.
I like the idea of leaving it as part 1, and maybe another time we could record a part 2 or 3.
Oh yeah, it gets a lot more complicated. I mean, I really just hit the surface, believe it or not. But I wanted to give like a thorough history, like Satoshi, and like this guy is incredible. He's really a revolutionary of money, because you know what's it going to become of the U.S. dollar in the next few years? Who knows? Who knows? It's kind of a weird situation. But yeah, go for it. Play us some Rothbard, man.
All right, so this is from What Has Government Done to Our Money? And clearly Rothbard wasn't aware of something like Bitcoin coming into existence, but I believe he's a brilliant guy. And so when he says something along this line, it makes me want to investigate and learn more.
Yeah, one thing I'll add before you start that, I think someone mentioned, if Keynes had lived 10 years longer, would he have rejected everything he thought he stood for? Maybe. Would Milton Friedman have gone back on a lot of what he said about monetary policy just needing to be adjusted? Well, maybe. Would Rothbard have been fascinated by Bitcoin? I think so. I mean, at the least, he would read about it in a day and learn more about it than we all know combined by this point. And he would understand it better than all of us. So I think he would at least respect the idea that it's not government money. It makes the government mad, so hooray. That's the way I would see it.
Yeah. Plus the fact that I was just saying it was like a naturally emerging phenomenon. And to your point, Stephen, about Rothbard and Friedman and Keynes, I know that Friedman late in his life retracted on some of his monetarist views.
Yeah, so did Hayek. Hayek was much better late in life. I mean, Road to Serfdom was a little bit give and take, but late in life, Hayek basically said I was wrong to give the government any benefit of the doubt, basically.
Well, Hayek, did he start to lean a little bit further towards, say, giving up on natural negative rights and yielding some on positive rights? Like I know, Dan, you've said that he made some damning statements in the Constitution of Liberty, which I haven't read yet. I've got the book, I haven't read it yet, but like I know John Stuart Mill was a little bit, and a lot of people say C.S. Lewis did, but what's your take on that?
My take on Hayek?
Well, yeah, late in his life.
I think a lot of people evolve over time, and Hayek is described as a bit of a muddler or a puzzler who would approach problems or situations almost freshly each time he encountered them, rather than having like a photographic or a bear trap type mind that I would imagine Rothbard had. I mean, I've heard stories where Rothbard could tell you which book, which page, which paragraph something is cited. So there's definitely several different types of mind out there. But from what I understand, I haven't read a whole lot of Hayek, but he does leave a lot of room for a state to be legitimized and have an important role in society. And as an anarchist, anarcho-capitalist myself, that doesn't square with me. But even Mises, he said some statements, even in the same paragraph, where he's saying that anything not free market leads to socialism, but then then he says something that is not free market is permissible or legitimate. So I think do you recall that from one of our roundtables?
Yes, I do, from his book Liberty, or essay, Liberty and Property. And I think it also goes back to like what John Locke said about natural rights and the legitimacy of property rights because of man mixing his labor with the natural resources and land and first original factors of production, in that being the legitimacy of property, but how he did yield a little bit on certain areas of expediency, like maybe contracts and roads and things of that nature. So I think it all goes back to same thing with Mises or Hayek. I mean, at what point do you not own your own stratosphere when you talk about property rights preventing you from your air from being polluted, say, and from the air traffic control, and being able to tell you how high you can fly your drones, or having, you can go to the extent of planes and satellites orbiting the Earth above your stratosphere, like and beneath you, concerning mineral rights. To what extent do you own your property? Certain classical liberals will definitely yield a little bit on that. And
I would see market efficiency even that. I mean, imagine like a drone, it's a really expensive piece of equipment. Obviously, you don't want it to fly into other pieces of equipment.
right.
If it gets to a point where there's like 100 drones in the sky, obviously, the market would have to make a drone that avoids others or stays in like some kind of path that avoids others. I don't think government could solve that problem by trying to regulate the air. I'm getting off topic.
No, I agree. I agree with you, but I'm just saying the whole question is asked, what point, for the sake of expediency, do you have to have public property on top of private property?
Right.
Even for those who would say, mostly they would tend to side with private property rights, but where Locke or Mises or Hayek didn't, and Rothbard obviously did. He kept the logic consistent, but that's just, food for thought.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned John Stuart Mill. I was at the bookstore today, and I picked up a copy of On Liberty by him, so I'm going to give that a read. But yeah, obviously he was pretty controversial. I was reading the introduction, and it's like, father was James Hill and was a great fan of Jeremy Bentham. So
yeah, I know on episode 240 of Tom Wood's show, he had an interesting guest, and they talked about some of his flaws and controversies late in his life. And
yeah, I know you have an article, Dan, on Jeremy Bentham, that motherfucker.
Yeah, the Panopticon. I also got a lecture by Rothbard on the history of economic thought that you can access via the repository that talks about John Stuart Mill and James Mill.
I think James Mill is better than John Stuart Mill by far, but both are pretty.
Yeah, I think it refers to James Mill as El Wimpo.
Yeah, there's a pretty good Liberty Classroom lecture on James Mill and John Stuart Mill.
Yeah, and I'll be posting my affiliate link to Tom Wood's Liberty Classroom at the description page of this YouTube video.
Oh, yeah. Feel free to post this in the Tom Woods Elite. This is really like practice for me, honestly. Like I wanted to like give this presentation to a few friends and like see how it flowed, and it seemed like you guys liked it. Do you guys have any suggestions? Anything I said that was just like Chinese or like didn't make sense, like need better explaining?
Yeah, I can give you a little bit of feedback, maybe offline.
All right, for sure.
But I do want to ask you to address the regression theorem as postulated by Menger and Mises, and stated in Rothbard's What Has Government Done to Our Money, where certain commodities become a medium of exchange through market processes as they have different factors and attributes that make them more desirable for people to use them for third-party, or instead of direct exchange, they can be used as indirect exchange, and through these processes, gold and silver have generally won out And the argument is that this process, this cumulative development of medium of exchange on the free market, is the only way that money can become established. Money cannot originate in any other way, neither by everyone suddenly deciding to create money out of useless material, nor by government calling bits of paper money.
Yeah, I mean, I've thought about this a lot. You guys were beating me up on that one post, and I think I was misrepresenting what a commodity was. You know, I don't think it's fair to describe a desktop computer or a smartphone as a commodity, but I would have to argue that electricity is a part of the equation that I think would support my argument that, in some sense, it does come from a commodity. The whole basis of it is the mining aspect, that you're first going to mine and use that electricity. But, you know, so you're already putting real dollars into it, no matter which way you look at it, just paying for electricity. The electricity is being directed in a way that's being allocated. So, I mean, it's obviously an argument. For my own sake, I need to work on the argument and try to make it as unfalsifiable as I can, but I can understand what you're saying, that, you know, especially in the Rothbardian Misesian tradition, you know, money derives from a commodity. You know, specifically, you know, this is really where I get thrown off in my argument when Rothbard describes, you know, it's based on weights of money. Well, what is the weight of a Bitcoin? I mean, it's not weight in any real sense we would imagine. I mean, maybe in some scientific sense, when data gets sent to a smartphone, that smartphone's some type of amount heavier. I don't even know if that even makes sense, but
well, wouldn't it be based in on just the productivity from the software programmers and decryptors and encryptors that are involved in its mining? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, you know, the point of the Bitcoin system and the protocol is it's a self-regulating system. Now, the source code can be updated, but this has to be accepted by everybody. I can't just go in the source code and just wipe out some stuff and, like, you know, fuck up Bitcoin today. Obviously, like, these are changes that have to be accepted by the network. The reason the Bitcoin fork took so long to happen is because a certain amount of people had to agree to it, especially the miners. So, yeah, I mean, that's one of the hardest things to conclude is, does cryptocurrency evolve from a commodity? And I think I messed it
to you, Steven, real quickly, because I can clarify the thought on that. And since we're just looking at your background, maybe since we're recording video, why don't you throw up a web page of your choosing, perhaps actual Anarchy or something along those lines.
Oh yeah, I write for Actual Anarchy, which Dan started, but I've been writing for, and you can find the tag Steven Clyde and just find any of my articles.
Of which there are many, and they're quite good. And there's also a guy named Scott Albright who's on the call, who writes very good stuff.
Oh, okay. See, I never confirmed who Scott Albright was, but I remember you saying, Ryan, you were reading Economic Harmony, so.
Yeah, well, I'm reading it the second time around, and I'm doing some chapter reviews. I've already did 4. I'm on the 5th one now. I'm writing the 5th. I'm like going over and writing the 5th one outline. I need to get Rothbard's Man Economy and State Chapter 2 as well. It's going to be it's a good chapter.
I need to stop putting off Man Economy and State. I need to just stop everything, read Man Economy and State all the way through, and just it's hard to do that.
Yeah, trust me, it's the worst thing to do is just hold up on reading it and then wait until the last minute, because that's what I'm doing right now is going through this thing pretty much from morning to until night.
Yeah, as I was reading Man Economy and State, you know, the way Rothbard speaks to you, he's kind of telling you things you already know, but he's connecting it all. Like,
honestly, it feels like I'm not forgetting the content from each chapter. It just seems like it's just the content that he's either repeating, or I would already know why it would already happen.
Yeah, like Law of Diminishing Returns is it's kind of obvious if you think about it. Obviously, like, you know, you have value in one thing, and, you know, once you have an excess of things, they diminish in value. It's kind of obvious, but, you know, he's describing you an economic fact that it's, you know, it's easy to understand. It's just kind of the way it is.
Well, I think it corroborates, too, with what Bastiat talks about in Economic Harmony. It's about the effects of innovation rendering more gratuitous utility while there's a decrease in the value of it. So you can apply that, too, with the law of diminishing returns. You know, when have so much utility from it, they're not going to just keep additional. I mean, keep getting additional units of it. You know, it's the whole the whole law of dimension utility. It's a beautiful exposition of Crusoe economics in praxeology in action, and abounding it to like we just keep building on step by step gradually, like direct exchange. Or I'm sorry, isolationist production, direct exchange, indirect exchange. You know, prices, you know, capital, consumption, savings. It's just great. It's 1,050 pages, 1,100 pages of very readable material.
I mean, it's a beautiful book title. Huh?
Yeah.
But I guess I can address the regression theorem in the sense that, okay, the main thesis of the regression theorem is that, okay, obviously it traces back to a commodity, but also it's the fact that we know the value of something today because we knew it had a certain value yesterday. And with Bitcoin, obviously you can just look at the graph, you can obviously trace it in a regression theorem type way, but we'll still have to battle out that thought, you know, can it ultimately trace back to a commodity? Well, I private messaged Dennis and I was like, hey, is electricity a commodity? I mean, if it wasn't, imagine I went to Washington and I plugged in my lamp and it short-circuited the lamp because the electricity was different there. Well, no, you know, 120 volts electricity is pretty standard. So the way electricity is sold, it could be kind of considered a commodity. So does it come from a commodity? I don't know. I think about that every day, but I can't say for sure that I've won the argument. I feel like the opposing side still has good points, and you know, even Peter Schiff, I think he overplays his gold card, but you know, he has good points. You know, it is reasonable to think about, okay, what's going to happen when the government comes in and tries to regulate this all? That is something worth thinking about.
Yeah, so I'll address that real quickly. From what I understand, it's probably been 3 or 4 years now, but apparently you're supposed to report on your taxes if you've bought and sold and come out with any gains from Bitcoin and report that as income.
Well, there's a few weird things. So for Coinbase, for example, I forget to, I'm going to put that in the PowerPoint, but I think if you deal with more than $20,000 of Bitcoin in a year, you have to report that to the IRS on Coinbase. I know that for a fact. So, I mean, regulations are going to slowly creep in. It's just the way it is. You know, thank God the government's so useless and inefficient that it's going to take them longer to get on board with it than it's going to take for people to get on board with it. But, I mean, you know, the government has taken notice, you know, when the money does start all flowing into this, you know, they can't not take notice. They're going to have to address it and be like, okay, you know, what are we going to do about it?
All right, so here's what I'm going to add about the commodity. And the relationship with commodities and money is that the money or commodity is still available to man. So your example of electricity being used, as soon as that electricity is used, it's gone, correct?
Right.
Yeah, so in Section 6 on page 15, Rothbard talks about since a commodity is money, it follows that the entire stock of the metal, so long as it is available to man, constitutes the world's stock of money. It makes no real difference what the shape of any of the metal is at any time. If iron is money, then all of the iron is money, whether it's in the form of bars, chunks, or embodied in specialized machinery. Gold has been traded as money in the form of nuggets, as gold dust in sacks, or even as jewelry. It should not be surprising that gold or other monies can be traded in many forms, since their important feature is their weight.
Yeah, I think he also mentions, you know, the entire supply of money is determined by the total weight of all the stock of money, or something like that.
Right, that's available to man.
Right.
So I think that is a distinction between the commodity in the sense of the monetary versus the commodity in the sense of electricity or some kind of supply of something that, you know, can be considered a commodity in another sense. Because once that electricity is used, it is gone, right?
Right. I mean, my only response to that could be, well, you can store energy as well. You don't have to use it. But yeah, I mean, as far as gold goes, gold can last like forever. It's hardish, you know. It's just a really, really practical. It was really, really practical money, and that's why gold and silver lasted so long. It's you know, based on like the scarcity that, you know, I think I forget if it was Rothbard that mentioned it. You know, like plutonium couldn't have been a currency. It's too abundant. You know, the fact that gold and silver were hard to mine, you know, it took labor to do it. You know, it gave it value, and you can. It was weird. There's a site, I forget what it's called, but I think it was talking about how India, they don't own the most amount of gold, but they use the most amount of gold, like in jewelry and all their industrial uses for gold. But yeah, I understand your point that, you know, when you use electricity, it's gone. But I guess the only thing I could say is the electricity is an input. Obviously, if it didn't create real value, there wouldn't be an incentive for miners to do this. I mean, obviously, Bitcoin's been around since 2009. You know, you would think at this point people would have been like, "Oh, this is a scam." You know, it hasn't gone up in price. But the fact that you can actually go out and liquidate this Bitcoin for cash, and it's failed time and time again. You know, like the regression theorem goes, I was able to buy and sell Bitcoin for this price yesterday and the day before, and ever since it hasn't failed. So, yeah, I mean, if we were going to conclude this at all, we'd have to concede in one area, like, you know, okay, Bitcoin is money, but it's not commodity sourced. But I think it lines up with a lot of what Rothbard says money is. You know, it wasn't government that created cryptocurrency. The ball from the people, individuals that wanted to get involved with it.
I'll stop you right there. I have heard theories that it is a government program similar to what, you know, Snowden discusses with PRISM and other NSA features and supercomputer technologies in an effort to, no, seriously.
No, I mean, I
have more
can imagine that.
And almost a form of entrapment, because if you think something's anonymous, then you're more likely to do things that are quote-unquote illegal. And if they have set the playing field, so you think that it's a safe space, right, where you can do things that are quote-unquote illegal, then they'll have visibility into that more so than if it were truly black market with cash. And I think this is one of the reasons why they often advocate for a cashless society, or, say, eliminating the $100 bill, as I think Larry Summers had suggested in a paper a year or two ago, former Treasury Secretary and President of Harvard, which I find interesting in a certain respect, and that is that with inflation of the currency, the dollar has lost so much of its value, even in the last 40, 50 years, since Nixon depegged the dollar from gold in 1971. Back in 1971, I believe you could have maybe a $1,000 bill or at least a $500 bill. And what a $100 bill was worth then is now worth what a $20 bill is to us today. So, in effect, the total amount you can have in a single piece of paper has been dramatically reduced, not only with the elimination of the larger denomination bills, but also the fact that a $100 bill today is only the equivalent of what a $20 bill was in 1965.
Mm-hmm.
So I just find that interesting. It's almost counterintuitive, because you're used to seeing things in inflations and hyperinflations where the denominations keep getting larger and larger and larger on the currency bills, on the units. But we seem to be having a reverse, which is sort of bizarre.
Yeah. I guess that's one thing I forgot to add to the presentation. I think it was you who said it a few days ago, like, wouldn't you just be able to divide Bitcoin into 1 billion units? Well, no. And I forgot to add this to the transaction fees part, because this is important. There's a minimum. Well, I did suggest that there is a minimum amount you have to send, but the real reason behind that is because you can't really send, a fraction of a penny. That it wouldn't be worth it to anybody. Because imagine the miner's goal, he has to at least make it worth his while. If he's putting in electricity that costs a certain amount of money, he can't make a loss on it. So there is a minimum amount you can send. So it wouldn't ever get to the point where you're sending like a millionth of a penny. It wouldn't make sense because no miner would accept the millionth of a penny when they're going to put in like 50 cents worth of electricity or whatever.
All right, so let me stop you there. So earlier in this presentation, you said that somebody suggested that by 2021, which is just 3.5, 4 years from now, that a single Bitcoin would be worth what? I think you said $20,000?
$100,000.
$100,000, okay. So let's assume that one Bitcoin is $100,000.
Right.
And right now it's 3,000, and 2 years ago it was 300, right? Something like that. So if it's worth $100,000, then how many decimal points in do we go before the transaction fee scenario that you just described even takes effect, right?
That's a good point.
1/100,000, or I don't know, like 6 digits in, that's still worth quote unquote $1.
Yeah, I think the reason the price is going to skyrocket is exactly because it's going to get, miners are just going to stop mining. And what happens when transactions stop flowing the way they do? I mean, the value is going to skyrocket because the supply is capped wherever the miners cut off. Does that make sense? So, like,
but if no one's processing it, then how could you trade it?
Well, it is based on the 8 decimal point system, so you can't go lower than that. But that is a good point that, once the coin's like $1,000, 0.001 might be lower than that, like 0.0001 or something like that.
Right, but so there's two parts to this question. Number one is you said that the miners will not have an incentive to continue mining. So that would, I would imagine, mean that processing a transaction would be very, very difficult and cumbersome.
Yeah, it would just be too expensive, if people,
so if you can't buy and sell with Bitcoins at that point, how do they have any value at all if you can't use them?
Huh. That's kind of what I was going into. I think at some point we're going to have to transfer into another cryptocurrency. I mean, even in the next year, Bitcoin might get taken over. It might happen. There are better coins coming along that are faster that are going to solve. Bitcoin's the first technology to do it. So, I'm actually not the biggest fan of Bitcoin, believe it or not. I mean, I think it's important for people to understand, but you're right that at some point, maybe it will drop in value in that sense. But I don't know. I'm gonna have to ponder on that because it would seem like if miners stopped interacting, then transactions would stop flowing. So,
in other words, Bitcoin bubble.
Well, actually. Well, I think that's part of what the Bitcoin fork tried to solve. Is basically the blockchain was a 4 megabyte blockchain, and the fork made it to 8 megabytes, so it can do double the amount of transactions. So I think what they were trying to do is prolong the demise. But before the ultimate demise, when you can't really trade anymore, it's gonna reach a crazy high. I understand what you're saying. I never even thought about it like that. If it is true that transactions get so hard that miners can't get involved, well, even if you're holding a coin that makes a lot of money, if you can't even send it, it's useless. So I see what you're saying. That's a good question.
Right, and then as the value increases, which then you can go 8 decimal points in my mind, the decimal point almost becomes irrelevant, and so 21 million becomes 21 or 231 trillion, which is roughly the world currency stock supply right now of all the currencies in all the world. So I don't see how this is this cap really has any bearing on the inflation factor, because each unit, each Satoshi, could become the equivalent of $1 or close to it, or a penny or whatever. But the 21 million units is a bit arbitrary, not only in the 21 million, but also in the decimal point placement.
Yeah, I mean, the more I think about it, even if transaction fees were high, the miners would still want that money. So even if the minimum was like 0.000001, if that amount's worth, proportional to what it is now, a lot more, then whatever decimal place it is wouldn't matter as much. What really focuses on is what's the value of that. So like what
right. Exactly. You're making my point for me. Because you're saying that the value is going to move, so the decimal point will essentially become irrelevant, and so the de facto unit of a Satoshi will not, in fact, be capped. I know these are big questions.
No,
and I'm not expecting to have answers for them. I'm coming at it with a skeptical mind.
No, that's a really good question. I mean, I'd have to think about that more mathematically. Like, what would happen if it was $100,000 for a Bitcoin? Like, and I was going to buy like $1 of Bitcoin. Like, what would that even look like? So, I'll make that a math project question for me later. I'll write that down.
Okay. So here's my other question for you. What is the relationship? You mentioned that there are several other cryptocurrencies. I think you said in the hundreds or thousands of them.
Yeah, on CoinMarketCap right now. Let's see how many coins are in CoinMarketCap. Yesterday it was like 830, yet today it's like 843. So there are different currencies being added every day. So I'm guessing your question's going to be, okay, if there was a million different currencies, isn't that in itself an endless supply cap?
Right, and this was an objection I raised to some friends of mine who were going to invest a significant amount of money into a mining operation about 4 years ago. And I was like, well, if I could just start my own coin and anyone else can start their own coin, then there really is no limit on the number of crypto coins that can be out there.
Yeah, so I guess the way to address that is the most reputable coins have reputable people doing this. I mean, yeah, we could create a coin. Yeah, we could pretty much copy the open source. I mean, a lot of these coins are just all rip-offs of the other coin. No matter what it is, they're all based on blockchain technology. Some are just forks of other coins, but there's just endless coins being added. Some of them are retarded.
How many have gone defunct? Like, how many have started and then just are worth zero now? They're no longer.
Some of them are purposely meant to do that. So basically, there are coins called ICO coins, and basically you can imagine an ICO coin is a coin that's about to come out, and you're hyping it up. Let me just show you. I don't know how to explain it. ICO coins. Let's see what's going on. So basically, in ICOs, these are all coins that are about to be released to the network, and people can buy. They're trying.
Hold on. We were just seeing your background, so I think you need to adjust your screen share settings to show the page you're trying to show.
Oh yeah. Let me see here.
It'll be in the control panel of the app.
What do you guys see now?
Still your background.
Okay.
If you're looking at the FCC app, the one in between the telephone and the video camera is the screen share option, and you might need to do some adjustments in that one by pressing either on the pause button or the stop button and then restart it, and then it'll allow you to choose which windows to share.
Okay. All right. Let's see here. How about that?
There we go. I saw something
Right,
for a moment.
Yeah. All right.
It's good.
Back up here. Let me just find this.
Sorry for the technical difficulties. This is the first time that Steven has used this software that we use for a few other things like the Actual Anarchy podcast and the Rothbard Roundtable.
It's like learning to ride a bike. All right, but anyways, so you can see like upcoming ICOs. So basically, these are just coins that are about to hit the market. I'll tell you right now, most of them are pump and dump. So basically, what that means is they're getting a bunch of people to put their money into it. The first day it's launched, price is going to go way up. All these guys that made the coin are going to cash out at the top, and basically when people see the coin hit the market, they're going to see the price go way up. They're going to be like, wow, I should buy in. But guess what's going to happen? They're going to be feeding the rise up, and everybody else who knew what's going to happen is going to cash out. So I wouldn't call them scams. I would just call them, I'm not going to lie. You can make a lot of money on ICOs. If you follow the technology, like you time it right. The point is when you get in an ICO, like you want to sell right away. Sell right away, no matter what it is, because it's about the pump and dump. Now there are coins that are going to become great coins. They're coins that have great uses, but the main thing that makes a coin is like the people surrounding it. What's the reputation? Are they the developers? Are they just econ nerds? I mean, it does matter. So you have like a face in the company. Another thing, millions of dollars to invest in a coin. It's not just a matter of making the source code and launching the coin. It's the investment money. This is all done by rich people. This is done by people with a good chunk of cash. So I mean, I understand the fear that if there's just a million coins, what's to stop all the value from just kind of like flowing in between them versus them? Well, it's kind of the opposite. It's all the money is going to flow to the top here. So let me just change this to supply, or excuse me, not to volume. Excuse me.
And just so you're aware, Steven, I'm still not seeing anything on your screen other than your background.
Still?
Still.
Oh, I thought you guys were seeing it. Let's see. Coming out? Did that fix it?
No.
Oh, weird. Okay.
There should be a little window that pops up that.
That do it?
No, now it's my screen.
Oh, weird.
All right. Now you got my screen.
That is so weird.
So I'll tell you what, when I give you presentation rights back,
Okay.
which I can do right here, it should allow you to choose which windows to share.
Yeah.
Checkbox, and just make sure you choose the one you want to share. So I'm going to give you the presenting rights. Just a moment here. There we go. Stand by. I hit the wrong button. There we go.
All right.
All right, now it should ask you which screen you want to share.
Yeah. Here we go. You guys see this now?
There we go.
Perfect.
Great success. Fix the mesh.
Holy. Okay. Yeah, I think we just needed to restart the whole thing. But anyways, so when I wake up in the morning, the first thing I do is I get on here and I look at the volume. You can look at the price all day you want, but what it's really about is the volume. Where's the money flowing? So most coins, there are coins that have like $5 in value. I mean, they're just nothingness coins, but you can kind of get to like the top 20 coins where you're starting to get to the millions, or excuse me, the billions in money here. So over time, the money is really going to flow. I mean, right now, this is just a big free market experiment. Imagine you have 1,000 different companies all producing the same product, and at the end of the day, the products that have the most practical uses and the ones people generally want to buy, that's where the money is going to flow, and everybody else is going to fall off. In a few years, I imagine the number of currencies we have now will be stripped down to a few. Most are just going to die out, but we'll see. There are a lot of coins that are just really, really different. They have a lot of potential to grow. Like, I have a lot of high hopes for Golem. It's the idea of being able to like rent out your computer power. There are plenty of people who could just leave their computer on and just make money. That's what mining is, but it's just in general. So, in a sense, the money's flowing in directions where it wouldn't just make Bitcoin tank one day or any coin tank one day.
So, Steven, I'll ask you on our on a subsequent follow-up presentation, perhaps you could talk about the contractual capabilities and benefits of using a thing like Bitcoin, because I know that's a whole other realm that can create a lot of efficiencies in relation to contracts and fulfillment of obligations and certain conditions being met before the payment processes and things of that nature. I think that that has a significant utility.
Yeah, for sure. And it's not so much the currency, it's also the blockchain technology too. It's just really, really secure. It's really, really trusted technology. I mean, when it comes down to it, if people trust blockchain more than they do their dollar bills, they're going to switch to that. And we're seeing it happen now. We're seeing it happen at a rapid rate. People are seeing, I swear, you talk to the average person, they don't know anything about Bitcoin. They don't know that they could take out their smartphone and have some Bitcoin in about 10 seconds, or not 10, just pretty quick, pretty instantly. So, I think in the next year or two, I mean, everybody's just going to talk about it, and this is kind of like the pre-stage right now where not many people know about it. There's just hundreds and hundreds of different random coins that everybody's trying to get a foot in the door. It wouldn't be a bad idea to try to make a coin, but you'd have to think, how are you going to market it? Where are you going to get your investment money from? Because your whole goal, you at least want to pump and dump once. You at least want to go 10, 20x on your investment and get out if you can. But if you believe in your technology, I mean, your coin will grow. So it looks like Ethereum has the most volume right now. So Bitcoin's the #1 coin. It's the #1 talked about coin. Most people wouldn't even know what Ethereum is. But Ethereum has 2.1 billion in volume. Bitcoin's at 1.33, so it's twice.
And this is U.S. dollars volume?
Yeah, U.S. dollars. Now, I will say it doesn't compare to the 70 trillion I think it is in gold value. It's still got a ways to catch up the gold value, so total. But yeah, a lot of money is in this, and you could be as skeptical as you damn want, but if it's not going to kill you to invest in it and just put it aside. You can just put it in a wallet and forget about it, and just check it in a year, and you'll be so surprised. And I remember when I turned my first $50 into $250, it felt wizardly. I don't know.
Yeah, I've had that feeling before with some other things that I've invested in. I looked like a real genius for a while.
Yeah. No, stocks aren't as good of a bet. Stocks are much slower. The market's so much slower, and you could wake up and everything's gone. Like at least for coins, you can set alerts. Like it can alert you at 2 a.m. if your coin's taking, you can sell. But otherwise, you can have and sell orders. So just to give you a quick example, imagine I bought in a coin, let's say 1,000 satoshis, and now the price has gone to 1,500 satoshis. Well, I've already made that 500 satoshi gain. I can just put a sell wall at 1,200 satoshis. The price might drop, and I'll still sell and make a gain, or the price can just keep going up. And as that 1,500 satoshis turns into 2,000, I can just increase my sell limit. Does that make sense? So overall, you're just increasing your percentage gains, and that way you can go to sleep. And if the coin tanks, you get sold out. So
let me ask you another question, and then I don't know if people need to start thinking about winding down because it is a Wednesday night, and we got some East Coast folks on here.
Yeah.
But how does this play with Gresham's law? Because I can imagine that if so many people are looking at this from the speculative angle and saying, well, it's going to be worth $100,000 per Bitcoin in just a few years, then why on earth would you ever sell one? Why would you ever use one for a transaction to buy a pizza? Wasn't there a story a couple of years ago about somebody bought like a pizza with like 18 Bitcoins, and now that could have been...
it was 10,000 Bitcoins. Yeah, guy bought a Papa John's pizza for 10,000 Bitcoins in one of the first transactions.
Right. Yeah. So if people look at those stories and go, oh, well, now Bitcoin's worth $3,000 or almost $4,000, why would I ever use one?
Yeah, I mean, in a way, doesn't that compare to the fear of hoarding now? That, if people, all businessmen want to do is hoard money, well, there's only so much benefit to hoarding money. I mean, what are you going to do with all this money? I mean, you could be expanding that money. Yeah, well, especially with dollar bills. In essence, it's not smart to hoard dollar bills. It's going down in value. I mean, it doesn't affect people like us who aren't rich. But if you have $1 billion, the inflation does matter. You're going to want to do something with that money, or eventually you're just going to have lost so much value. So with the cap supply, it's a little bit different.
Yeah, I'm just wondering what is the nature of general opinion of the average Bitcoin user? Like you were just saying, 99% of the population is only vaguely aware of this stuff.
Yeah, it has that compared to Gresham's law, which is bad money drives out good. Well, I don't know. I always thought the kind of intuition behind that statement is, well, bad money drives out good because of government. It's golden money is good money, but the government is the bad that drives it out. I don't know if that wasn't supposed to be the analogy of the economic theory of that, but
no, it is. It is. Rothbard clarifies it in his book that Gresham's law only applies to when the government intervenes.
Yeah.
And is basically his example is the government decrees that a coin that has been in circulation for 5 years and is very worn down and has lost something like 10% of its volume or its weight.
Right. And the government forces you to sell it at full value or accept it at full value. Yeah.
For a new coin, and
right.
So people then hold on to the brand new coins that are full weight and only use the crappy coins that are underweight, and those are the ones that will circulate.
Yeah.
Could you apply that to, say, like a professional athlete who demands to get paid, say, 45, 40, what he made at 25, 30? I'm just thinking hypothetically how you compare this. I see what you're saying, with the devaluation, whether it's the bimetallism or this, but it's almost like a parity. Sounds like.
I'd say out of all the books I have, though, I keep this book nearby at all times. Pretty much at all times.
I've got it too.
My go-to book for money. Honestly, I read half of this book in the bathtub. So it had some water stains in it, but the best books ever.
That is gratuitous utility right there.
No.
Well, hey guys, why don't we wind this one down? This has been really great, Steven, and I think that there's plenty more to talk about in a couple of follow-up presentations. I think this is a pretty cool thing that you've put together.
Oh yeah, thanks for letting me present this to you guys. I mean, if I've decreased your skepticism by 1%, I feel that's pretty good. So. Oh, and Thomas, I wanted to ask, did you learn anything, Thomas?
Yeah, I did get a better understanding. I did get a better understanding on how the whole stuff works.
Yeah. I mean, I can be your go-to guy. Just if you have any questions you want to get involved, I can give you the resources you need. I won't lie to you. There are people out there who try to scam you, like, oh, you're getting into Bitcoin? Yeah, let me sell you some Bitcoin for like $4,000. I mean, that's literally what people on local Bitcoin do. Is someone that just has so many Bitcoins, why not just put up a few for a high price, and some sucker will come along and want the Bitcoin, they'll just buy it for that price. So there's a lot of people.
I just want to say real quick about what I liked about your presentation is that you used a lot of Bob Murphy's book, Understanding Bitcoin. I've read a little over half of that, and I've read most of What Has Government Done to Our Money, but both those books really help you understand monetary economics better. And it's just good to have this basic understanding of Bitcoin. So
Yeah, I mean, if you could sense, this presentation is meant for someone who has at least a grasp of Austrian business cycle theory. You know, it's obviously presented from an Austrian perspective, but how do you present Bitcoin in an authoritarian manner? I can't imagine being like, man, Bitcoin's so great because we can centralize it. Just talk to anybody in the Bitcoin world; they're pretty much all libertarian. So that is one thing that's great about it.
I first heard about it on Free Talk Live on the radio.
Oh, yeah. They're trying to get this one guy to debate Peter Schiff. I forget the guy's name, but we're trying to convert Peter Schiff, and I think, you know, I think he understands the value of it, but he doesn't want to admit it. That's basically where Peter Schiff's at. But I respect Peter Schiff. It's always good to have objections because the whole point of this is Bitcoin's not perfect. We need to figure out ways to add to it and make it better. So that's what new coins are. They're trying to make the technology better, and eventually we'll get to a point where there's a coin that has very few flaws and will always work well, and people will just go to that. You know, why put your money in a coin that takes an hour to do a transaction versus one that's instant transaction? It's no brainer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I like Schiff a lot. Just his episode appearances on Tom Woods and what he's exposed about the financial system. I really need to get his book, how an economy grows and why an economy grows and how it crashes. And
oh yeah,
he really opened up a good point about the trade deficit back in December of last year. Tom asked him, I think it was like episode 803 or 810, somewhere in that range, that Tom asked him, well, what are you going to say to people who say, well, you have a trade deficit with Kroger, your gas station or whatever, you don't, produce your own gas, mine it out of the ground or, grow your own food. And he just kind of scoffed at him and said, well, when you're using, when you got the Federal Reserve artificially lowering interest rates and infusions of cash from the Treasury and deficits to help finance a lot of it with the various, export subsidies or whatever, that you're distorting a big flow of where the capital goes and is allocated, and on top of the tax code and the capital gains tax and all of that, it just definitely puts our domestic laborers at a disadvantage that shouldn't be there. But you could say that about all government intervention, but he at least exposed one part that all of which he described nullifies the effects, the beneficial effects of free trade.
I mean, he's pretty much completely right about everything. I mean, I'm not saying even his objections to Bitcoin are wrong. I'm just saying he's just really reluctant to admit that Bitcoin's great at all. I mean, he can give all the reasonable objections like you guys can, but he doesn't ultimately reject it. I don't think he just can't really say it. But anyways, guys, I think it's time to go. But I just want to say thanks for listening to my presentation, and I'll figure out ways to improve it, and maybe you'll hear me present it again in another setting. I want to do a big Google Hangouts with. I mean, there's like 30,000 people in the anarcho-capitalist community I could get on board, so it'd just be cool to do a live video and get a lot of people on board, change a lot of lives. So thank you guys a bunch for tuning in.
No problem. It was a good lecture. Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Steven. And, if you want to maybe put together a short article or something along those lines, we could use that to promote this video or use this video as part of that article. And that'll be at actualanarchy.com.
Sounds good to me.
Awesome.
All right, guys. Have a great night.
All right, sounds good. And there will be no Rothbard Roundtable this weekend. I will be out of town, but we will be back next weekend. So thank you guys for coming out, and I appreciate it. It's always fun to chat with you, and we'll talk to you later.
All right, bye, guys.
All right. Good night, guys.
See you.